Give it a second here, and we are going to get going. Here we go. So once again, thank you everybody for joining us this afternoon. My name is Robert Bale. I'm Vice President of Sales here at Genea. Looking forward to going through this topic with you today. For those of you who are not familiar with Genea, I'm going to first go through, just give you a little bit of background on us. So we are a technology company based out of Southern California. The way we started our business about 9 years ago, we started with a solution to handle overtime HVAC requests and billings in multi-tenant office buildings. Throughout the last 9 years, we've grown our business dramatically. We've grown from about 9 million square feet of office space today to 250 million square feet of office space all over the country. And we've expanded our product line. So our products have gone from one product for overtime air to a sub-meter billing solution, which we'll talk about today. And then our newest offering is access control. The access control product is actually taking us international. We're now in over 15 countries, serving enterprise customers all over the world. A couple things that make us unique. One is we have a 99% customer retention rate. So that is at the building level for the commercial real estate side, as well as with our enterprise customers. We stay with our customers year over year. And a big reason for that is because of our 24/7 support model. It is Genea employees on call 24/7, making sure that the end users are happy, that tenants and commercial real estate buildings are happy, that we handle the entire process from implementation through training and ongoing support with a white glove approach. And it's a very, very key to the success of our business, which is a big reason why we have a 75 net promoter score, which puts us in the likes of Apple. So very, very important part of the business. So you can see, companies who we work with. For those of you who need references, feel free to reach out afterwards. We're happy to provide references all over the place. So 3 solutions. So we'll talk a little bit about each one in parts today. So we'll talk about our overtime HVAC solution. So at a very high level, gives your tenants the ability via a smartphone app or through their web portal to request overtime HVAC whenever they need it. We command points in the BMS to turn on, turn off, and then there's all the in-house billing as well as accounting integration. Our sub-meter billing solution gets rid of any messy spreadsheet that you may have used in the past to capture sub-meter billing reads for sub-meters for excessive energy consumption, for utility rooms, server rooms, supplemental AC units, and so forth. Really streamlines that collection process as well as billing process. And then our access control products, a cloud-based access control solution, allowing you to have a portfolio solution for access control, also allows you to go mobile and use a mobile credential to utilize your phone to enter buildings, enter parking decks, and so forth. So three wonderful solutions that we have as a product offering. So when we look at today's agenda, so the first thing that we're going to go over is, what should you be looking at when selecting a technology project? So there's a lot of things to go through when you select your projects. We'll talk about how do you evaluate and pick a vendor, what to look for specifically in a solution, go through a couple different case studies for each solution, and then of course, the Q&A. So with me today are our in-house experts. So I'll do just a brief intro to each of them. So first up will be Brian Haine, who's our Director of Technical Services. Brian, thank you for joining us. Maybe give a little bit of background on you, how long you've been at Genea, and kind of what your day-to-day life looks like working with us.
Hey, hi everyone. So I've been with Genea for somewhere in the region of 12 or 13 years, and my day-to-day is dealing with technical issues, connectivity issues, and bringing new buildings online, talking to the EMS vendors and building engineers to make sure we can connect to their building and get them working correctly.
Very cool, very cool. Thank you, Brian. Also with us will be Paul Marcoux. He's our Director of Sub-meter Billing. So Paul, same thing. How long have you been at Genea? Kind of what's your day-to-day like? What are you involved with at the business?
So I've been at Genea for about 9 years now. So day-to-day, typically what we're doing over here is trying to help and maintain metering billbacks, make sure that they're accurate, they're on time, but also help properties understand how to bill back, what's the proper way of doing things, and just working through all those scenarios with everyone.
Cool. Thanks, Paul. And then last but not least, Mr. Mike Maxeni, who's our Director of Access Control. So Mike, same to you. How long have you been with us? Kind of what are you overall involved with in the business?
Yeah, I've been with Genea for a year on Friday, so tomorrow, and came over to Genea through the acquisition of the access control product. So my day-to-day is helping our operations team implement our customers on a global basis, and then also helping the sales team as sort of a sales engineer, making sure that the solutions are designed properly for each individual project, and then working with customers on our security and compliance side.
Awesome. Awesome. Very cool. Well, thank you. Thanks to all three of you. Really appreciate you guys being here today. So I'm going to get the ball rolling and we'll walk through some slides and then we'll hear from each of you guys individually as we get to your parts. So first let's talk about selecting a technology project. So, one of the things that, our customers, especially on the commercial real estate side, they're looking at all the time is like, I want to do a lot at the building, but how do I prioritize, the different technology projects to implement in a site, right? So I look at this as like, three different buckets, if you will. One, there's general internal operations. So is it time now to make an upgrade to the building automation system? If you have an old train system that's out of date and you're ready to get away to something new. Are there major equipment upgrades? Meaning, is it, as you're upgrading your chiller, is it well overdue? You need a new piece of equipment in there. Are you looking at property management software? So there's just internal things that handle your day-to-day operations of working. Then there's tenant-facing things. So tenant-facing items such as work order systems. Are you implementing a work order systems, whether it be building engines or Angus, both Genea partners, or even work speed? Are you looking to do an access control system that is obviously tenant facing? So whether you're using anything with mobile credentials to get to a touchless environment, or if you're just looking for a standard access control system that uses the old white key cards. Or is this a vanity project? You're doing massive lobby renovations, you're changing out gyms, you're putting touchless kiosks all throughout the building. You have these various buckets where you have to try and figure out, okay, what am I gonna do? And a big part of that comes into like, what do you need right now, your immediate needs, and obviously how much funds do you have, right? It's we don't have a limited amount of capital to apply to these projects, so I have to pick and choose what you want to do. So and the other part is timing, right? Timing is everything. We're coming up on the end of the year here, so budgets are going into effect for the start of 2021, and so you have to figure out, okay, when can I do this? Not only because of capital-wise, but also time. There's also a time commitment when it comes to implementing any new technology in a building. So you look at this as, are we going to do something immediately? Can this be done quickly without a lot of disruption to my internal operations and to my tenants, so I can do it now? Do I have to wait for the budget? Is there a large capital requirement up front where I do have to budget for this, get approval from my asset managers and the ownership so we can start in the new year? Or do you do through parts out through the year? So can I do little pieces here and there throughout the course of the year to figure that out? So really, these are kind of the factors you have to look at when picking a project where you want to bring in new technology. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room. Obviously, I am broadcasting from my house. So those of you looking behind, you see the nice whatever this thing is that my wife had me hang up on the wall that has candles. So I'm still at home. I've been home since March, and so the elephant in the room is like COVID-19. It's impacting our personal and professional lives every single day. So we've got vendors like ourselves here at Genea, as well as our customers, trying to figure out new ways to deal with this, to use it to work. How do you adjust your product? How do you adjust your daily life? How do you adjust the business to handle all these nuances of what our world looks like? Ultimately, we have to say is that in a changing environment, which every day seems something different, you still need to invest in the buildings. You still need to invest in technologies that you have in your suites that you work on a day-to-day basis with. And how do you select the right product and the partner with this other big thing that's happening in the world? And I wish I had an answer. I don't, because we'd all be a lot better off. But this is something you have to factor in this as well. So being conscientious of that, also understanding work still needs to get done. It's kind of how we're looking at this. But I didn't want to leave this so that nobody's talking about it. It's a very big deal. So, but just something else to factor in as you're looking for your budgets and looking at the different technology. The other thing you have to really look at is how do you pick a technology vendor to partner with? So what's your process like? So, how do you find somebody to work with at a multi-tenant office building? Do you look at buildings where you worked in the past? Do you look at other companies where you worked with and bring your technology with you? Do you rely upon organizations like BOMA or Cornet during your selection process? Are they active in the communities within with your professional lives? So are they sponsors of these events? Do you have webinars like this where it makes sense to bring in that technology provider? The big one is, how do you mitigate risk when you're selecting a vendor? So, that's always a scary thing. You're going to bring in a new technology that's going to change potentially how you work day to day, how your tenants interact with the building, how your employees come into a site. How do you make sure that there's not a lot of risk to this, or you mitigate the risk so that it doesn't negatively impact the business? And with anything, tenant facing, right? This is a thing we talk to property managers about all the time is, how do you get the tenants to buy off on this, or how do you get your employees to buy off on this so they're willing to use this new technology? And how do you envision your vendor partners working with you? These are all things that have to be factored in as you look at bringing in a new technology. The other thing you have to do is navigate a whirlwind of companies. So in the commercial real estate technology space, there's like 4,000 or 5,000 different companies who've come into the space over the last, say, 3 to 5 years. And you have to figure out, okay, who do I trust? Who can I work with? Including companies like us. Like this is a big thing. You got to, does this company have a brand? Have they been around for a while? These are things that I always, recommend that our customers ask. Before you do business with anybody, is take a look at, have they been around? What do the references look like? Have you talked to somebody who's actually used this service in the past? Or are you taking a stab in the dark and trying to use that? Frankly, a lot of these companies on this list next year will not be around. Like that's a very true fact. So you have to kind of, look at this, look at the environment to figure out, okay, who do we trust? Who do we partner with before you bring that company on site to interact with your tenants and your employees? So, not an easy task, but these are all things that you have to factor in. So what do we recommend that you look for in a solution? A couple things here. One is it should be as hardware agnostic as possible. You should have the ability to leverage existing things in your building, whether it be your existing building automation system for anything on that side that touches HVAC equipment, or can you work with your existing meters, or can you work with your existing controllers and readers on the access control side? There should be a lot of integrations. So, everything's in the cloud now. There should be really a lot of API integrations with directory services, with communication tools like Slack or Teams, also even integrations between multiple companies. So when you look at like a company like Genea, we're partners with Angus as well as Building Engines, the two largest work order providers in the commercial real estate industry. So can these two companies work together to provide data that's important to me as a property manager? There should be very minimal setup fees when it comes, especially on the software side. If it's cloud-based, it should be really easy and really cost-efficient to implement. And then ongoing support. Probably the most important part of the whole thing is the ongoing support. Am I going to be stuck? Question you should ask yourself is, I'm going to be stuck with this technology that nobody's trained me on, I don't know how to use, and other people are expected to use it. No, you want to be able to have a vendor who has ongoing support, onboarding for you and all your users, and they're there to help you when times are tough and you're not exactly sure what to do. You want a trusted partner. So we recommend starting with some easy wins. So a couple things to do is, one, get rid of paper forms. The amount of times that I go on a website for a multi-tenant office building and I see, here, download this form for this and that, download this form, fill it out, send it in. Like, that should go away, regardless of what the form's for. You shouldn't be filling out forms anymore to add users to the access control system. You shouldn't be filling out any forms to try and make a request for Overtime HVAC. Those should all go away. You should also get out of spreadsheet hell. No longer should you have messy spreadsheets where they've been passed down through multiple generations of property managers and building owners for you to try and manage something to build back a customer. Like, it is just an inefficient use of time. The spreadsheets, the amount of times that we see terrible spreadsheets is very often, but those should go away. And then you should be really looking at technologies to allow you to go mobile. How many things can you put in the hands of your tenants via mobile app? So these are some easy wins where you can really implement some easy technologies to really make this process better for you in a building. So first, let's start with Overtime HVAC. So the problem with Overtime HVAC is, like I showed you before, forms and work orders. So, 15 years ago, filling out a form for Overtime HVAC request, having an engineer walk down to the BMS, program that request, it was a great use of time, and it was the only way to do it. But, the problem with that is people circumvent work order systems. People stop using forms all the time. They just don't want to do it, or they get lazy. So they circumvent what your process should be, and they kind of go around the system, and they'll end up, you might have a tenant talk directly to your engineer, say, I need air now. Well, the problem with that is when you have an instance like overtime air, it's a billable event. So you often forget to bill that back, or you don't get the accurate billing. There's also leasing nuances. Like brokers have gotten very creative over the years where they essentially give everything away. So if you have a building where overtime HVAC is a billable event, you may have a tenant that negotiates different rates for different floors, different rates for different times of year, different rates based upon who's in the building at the same time. So there's all these little weird things that happen, and doing a form or a spreadsheet is just not an efficient way to accurately capture those billbacks. And of course, time-sensitive requests. Tenants are demanding, they come into the building now, they need service immediately. So you want to be able to provide that service in a very timely manner to get your tenants what they need. So obviously what we recommend, very selfishly, you're on a Genea demo after all, is utilizing a solution for tenant-facing automation. So you want a solution that gives your tenants the ability to pull up an app to request overtime HVAC whenever they need it. So that's just one part of it. It's I need air, I can pull up my app, I turn on the air, and it commands the points in the BMS, it turns it on. Even more important than that, this software solution needs to be able to, one, integrate with your existing BMS. You don't have to, we don't want to change anything. You don't have to rip out, your Siemens system and put in a Johnson Control system. You want to be able to leverage what you already have in place. You want it to be able to handle all the billing nuances. So once again, there should be no more spreadsheets for anything billbacks. It should all be done through the software solution. It should be very easy to use. So training for the tenants and all the users should be really, really simple. And there should be a quick implementation. So this should not take months and months and months. The goal is to do a technology like this that leverages the existing infrastructure in place, meaning your existing BMS, and you can implement quickly in, say, 30 to 45 days. And just for everybody, edification, we've actually implemented in 8 days. So we can go very, very fast. The other big component of this is there should be support 24/7. So requests for overtime HVAC happen, it's after hours, right? When there is nobody at the building, including the property staff. So if you have a tenant who makes a request and it doesn't turn on, who do they call for help? There should be an 866 number that's manned by a person where they can call for some help or get their password reset. It shouldn't be on the onus of the building teams to manage all that. It should all be done through your vendor provider. And what are the results of this? So when you bring in a new technology, it's easier to use. The tenants benefit from it. It's all automated in the background. You end up some really positive results. So here's a case study of one of our sites down in South Florida. Prior to us implementing the solution, they generated about $102,000 a year in overtime HVAC revenue. After the first year of us being implemented, we saw a $45,000 increase in overtime HVAC revenues. Part of that is when you make things easier to use, people tend to use it more, and you plug what we call revenue leakage. So you're ensuring that everything is being billed for 100% of the time. They also used our tool to save energy. So to be able to go on demand on Saturdays and minor holidays. So instead of just running the building for a half day on Saturday, you shut the building off and you go on demand. So it gives you an opportunity to really save a substantial amount of energy. Now, we do have a different use case these days because of COVID, where people are going more on demand during the normal business days and using that to save energy. So totally different use case, but it is relevant. The last part is process efficiency. So there is value to freeing people up to do other things. So when you're freeing up property managers and engineers that they don't have to stop what they're doing, program the automation system, put in a work order, manage a spreadsheet, you really have a lot of operational efficiencies. And in this instance, added about a little over $18,000 a year. So the way we looked at this, we just said, how many requests of overtime HVAC do we process? We assign 30 minutes per request. So you think of all the manual process that you go through and a $50 an hour labor factor. And the end story here is you've now brought an amenity to the tenants that was easy to install, happened in 30 days. And there's a financial benefit to this as well. We saw an increase in revenue of $45,000. We saved them about $27,000 in energy cost. And by making people more efficient, we also positively impacted them to the matter of just about $19,000. So when you subtract out our fees for the year with this new amenity, you've added an additional $65,000 in value to the building. So every building is a little bit different. One of the things that we get asked all the time is, what is going to happen in my building? The honest answer is, I have no idea. We do know that these three factors overall contribute to the value of a solution like this. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and just bring in Brian. our subject matter expert on everything overtime HVAC related, and just give some basic questions about it. So Brian, how do we connect to BMS? That's like number one question we get asked anytime we do presentations. How do you connect to the actual automation system, and can we work with anything, or what are some requirements that we need to work with that?
Hey Rob, yeah, and this is fairly simple. It's totally dependent, of course, on the BMS system. But if it's one of the BACnet flavor systems, or LonWorks or Modbus, one of the Cat5 network-based systems, we deploy a device out to site that sits on that network, and it can talk across the network to the different controllers. So it's pretty seamless. The serial-based systems, such as the older Siemens panels, we have solutions for those where we send out a cable that plugs into the Siemens system. Same thing with the older Andover systems. So pretty much any of the systems out there, even the proprietary ones, we can do some sort of interface to. And if we don't have a built interface, we have a knowledge base where we can tell you, hey, you need to get this piece of hardware, and this piece of hardware will do the conversion to allow us to talk to it.
Got it. That makes sense. Thank you. Another one that we hear quite a bit is, the building hasn't been upgraded to DDC controls. It's still pneumatic. Can we still connect to it, and can we provide value?
Sure. So there's many buildings that haven't gone full DDC yet. It is quite expensive. So as long as there is some form of energy management system, whether it just be controlling floor by floor, even if it's the entire building, we can still bring some value, because as you said earlier, we go on demand. If that means we turn the whole building off for a period of time and turn the whole building on just for one tenant, that's still an energy saving. So yes, depending on how much BMS control there is, we can bring more and more value to the building. So yeah, still not a problem.
Okay. All right, good. Another big one that we get also, especially when you look at cities like New York, Chicago, downtown LA, is are we going to turn on the chiller? And how do we make sure we meet enough load? How do we make sure we don't blow things up?
Well, you know what? I should have stopped you right at, are you going to turn on the chiller? We don't. We do not turn pieces of equipment on directly. We certainly don't turn chillers on. What we do is we turn on a point that enables the system to start. So we don't bypass any safeties. We don't directly command any piece of equipment. We still rely on a lot of the EMS programming to turn that equipment on. But to your point, minimum load. If you need to have a certain number of floors on to allow your chiller to run, then we can command multiple points. So for example, somebody comes in on the 10th floor and this building has three floor minimum load. We will add the point for the 10th floor plus the point for maybe the first floor and the top floor, whatever it may be. So we can command multiple floors, multiple points, multiple different configurations to ensure that there is enough load to allow the chiller to run.
Got it. Okay. And then, what about from an IT perspective? How do we get our device safely connected to the building? Obviously, it's connected to the internet. So how do we keep it safe, and so we don't have a situation like what happened to Target a few years back?
Yeah, top of everyone's mind right now. Yes, we do have a device that's on the network and is on the internet. As part of that, we require that we be on a private network behind an existing firewall, so that we can't be hacked directly. If our box gets hacked, then somebody has already gone through several other firewalls and security things to get to our box. And our device is connected to our data center by a very secure VPN. So again, somebody would have to hack multiple levels of security to get into our system. I'll never say it won't happen, can't happen, but we do everything we possibly can to avoid anything like that happening. and there is very limited access to our device by anything other than our data center. It is literally our support team. They're the only other people that can physically get into our device.
Got it. Got it. Okay. And then last question. How long does it take us to implement from the system? And what kind of work do we need to expect from the controls contractor, if any?
So as you said, I believe our shortlist is actually 7 days. Dependent on the building and the EMS vendor, we can go incredibly quickly, literally as long as it takes me to ship a device to you. But typically, yeah, 30 days is about normal. And the work from the controls contractor depends on the system and the relationship with the system. I normally expect a day or 2, absolute maximum, for a large complex system. For a smaller, simpler building, and when I say smaller, that's probably below 10 floors, you're probably looking at less than a day. So very minimal time and expense, and quite often you can ask your EMS vendor, hey, can we do this on a day where you're coming in to do planned maintenance, that sort of thing. So minimal expense from a controls vendor point of view.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Brian, thank you so much for that. That's really helpful. Once again, for anybody who has more questions about how we physically connect to the building, anything that we do for Overtime HVAC, Brian's email address and contact information will be made available to you, but he is our in-house expert when it comes to this. So thanks again, Brian.